But Miami built on porous limestone, a swamp. And there's no way any kind of flood barrier is going to keep the water from seeping in. As we scroll back, we look across the Caribbean and along the Gulf, we begin to realize those cities that have suffered worse from natural crises, Port-au-Prince, New Orleans, Houston, as severe and as awful as those situations have been, they're a dress rehearsal for what's to come. Now, no city is an island. Every city is connected to its rural hinterland in complex ways, often in relation to the production of food. I want to take you to the northern part of the Amazon, in Rhodonia. This is one of the world's largest terrestrial carbon sinks, processing millions of carbon every single year. What you see here is a single road over a 30-year period, and on either side you see land being cleared for pasture, for cattle, but also for soy, sugar production. You're seeing deforestation on a massive scale. Yeah. The red area here implies a net loss of forest in the last 14 years. The blue, if you could see it, there's not much, implies there's been an incremental gain. Now, as grim and gloomy as the situation is, and it is, there is a little bit of hope. See, the Brazilian government, from the national, the state, the municipal level, has also introduced a whole range, a lattice of parks and protected areas. And while not perfect, and not always limiting encroachment, they have served to tamp back deforestation. The same applies not just to Brazil, but all across the Americas, into the United States, Canada, and around the world. So let's talk about solutions. Despite climate denial at the highest levels, cities are taking action. You know, when the US pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, hundreds of cities in the United States and thousands more around the world doubled down on their climate commitments. And when the White House cracked down on so-called undocumented migrants in sanctuary cities, hundreds of cities and counties and states stood up in defiance and refused to enact that order. So cities are and can take action. But we're going to see a lot more of it, especially in the global south. You see, parts of Africa and Latin America are urbanizing before they industrialize. They're growing at 3 times the global average in terms of their population. And this is putting enormous strain on infrastructure and services. Now, there is a golden opportunity. It's a small opportunity, but a golden one in the next 10 to 20 years to really start designing in principles of resilience into our cities. There's not one single way of doing this, but there are a number of ways that are emerging. And I've spoken with hundreds of urban planners, of development specialists, of architects and civic activists, and a number of recurring principles keep coming out. And I just want to pass on 6. First, cities need a plan and a strategy to implement it. I mean, it sounds crazy, but the vast majority of the world's cities don't actually have a plan or a vision. They're too busy putting out daily fires to think ahead strategically. I mean, every city wants to be creative, happy, livable, resilient. Who doesn't? The challenge is how do you get there? And urban governance plays a key role. You could do worse and take a page from the Book of Singapore. In 1971, Singapore set a 50-year urban strategy and renews it every 5 years. What Singapore teaches us is not just the importance of continuity, but also the critical role of autonomy and discretion. Cities need the power to be able to issue debt, to raise taxes, to zone effectively, to build affordable housing. What cities need is nothing less than a devolution revolution. And this is going to require renegotiating the terms of the contract with the nation state. Second, you got to go green. Cities are already leading global decarbonization efforts. They're investing in congestion pricing schemes, in climate reduction emission targets, in biodiversity and parks and bikeways and walkways, and everything in between. There's an extraordinary menu of options they have to choose from. One of the great things is cities are already investing heavily in renewables, in solar and wind, not just in North America, but especially in Western Europe and parts of Asia. There are more than 8,000 cities right now in the world today with solar plants. There are 300 cities that have declared complete energy autonomy. One of my favorite stories comes from Medellin, which invested in a municipal hydroelectric plant, which doesn't only service its local needs, but allows the city to sell excess energy back onto the national grid. And it's not alone. There are 1,000 other cities just like it. Third, invest in integrated and multi-use solutions. The most successful cities are those that are going to invest in solutions that don't solve just one problem, but that solve multiple problems. Take the case of integrated public transport. When done well, rapid bus transit, light rail, bikeways, walkways, boatways, these can dramatically reduce emissions and congestion. They can do a lot more than that. They can improve public health. They can reduce dispersion. They can even increase safety. A great example of this comes from Seoul. You see, Seoul's population doubled over the last 30 years, but the footprint barely changed. How? Well, 75% of Seoul's residents get to work using what's been described as one of the most extraordinary public transport systems in the world. And Seoul used to be car country. Next, fourth, build densely, but also sustainably. The death of all cities is the sprawl. Cities need to know how to build resiliently, but also in a way that's inclusive. This is a picture right here of Dallas-Fort Worth. And what you see is its population also doubled over the last 30 years. But as you can see, it's spread into edge cities and suburbia as far as the eye can see. You see, cities need to know when not to build, so as not to reproduce urban sprawl and slums of downward accountability. The problem with Dallas-Fort Worth is that just 5% of its residents get to work using public transport. 95% use cars, which partly explains why it's got some of the longest commuting times in North America. Singapore, by contrast, got it right. They built vertically and built in affordable housing to boot. Fifth, steel. The smartest cities are nicking, pilfering, stealing left, right, and center. They don't have time to waste. They need tomorrow's technology today, and they're going to leapfrog to get there. This is New York, but it's not just New York that's doing a lot of stealing. It's Singapore, it's Seoul, it's Medellin. The urban renaissance is only going to be enabled when cities start borrowing from one another. And finally, work in global coalitions. There are more than 200 inner-city coalitions in the world today. There are more city coalitions than there are coalitions for nation-states. Just take a look at the Global Parliament of Mayors, set up by the late Ben Barber, who's driving an urban rights movement. Or consider the C40, a marvelous network of cities that has gathered thousands together to deliver clean energy. Or look at the World Economic Forum, which is developing smart city protocols, or the 100 Resilient Cities Initiative, which is leading a resilience revival. ECLI, UCLG, Metropolis, these are the movements of the future. What they all realize is that when cities work together, they can amplify their voice, not just on the national stage, but on the global stage. And with a voice comes potentially a vote, and then maybe even a veto. When nation-states default on their national sovereignty, cities have to step up. They can't wait, and they don't need to ask for permission. They can exert their own sovereignty. They understand that the local and the global have really truly come together, that we live in a global world, and we need to adjust our politics accordingly. As I travel around the world and I meet mayors and civic leaders, I'm amazed by the energy, enthusiasm, and effectiveness they bring to their work. They're pragmatists. They're problem solvers. They're paradiplomats. And in this moment of extraordinary international uncertainty, when our multilateral institutions are paralyzed, when our nation states are in retreat, cities and their leaders are our new 21st century visionaries. They deserve, no, they have a right